So it's time to have a look at some of the best FPL players to buy for game week 6, and we're going to start things off by talking about the Arsenal assets. As you guys can see, we got Kai Havertz, Bukayo Saka, Gabriel and David Raya, and guys, I think these Arsenal players should really be at the top of your list and a priority transfer to bring in for game week 6, right? Because Arsenal's next 3 fixtures are absolutely fantastic, right? They have Leicester at home, Southampton at home and Bournemouth away in the next 3 games, and I think these fixtures should be attacked, and ideally you want to triple up on Arsenal players. And look, I know a lot of people are using their wildcard this week, and if you were to ask me what 3 Arsenal players would I go for on wildcard, I would personally say Havertz, Saka and one of Raya or Gabriel, right? I prefer the double Arsenal attack, and I'll tell you why. The reason why I would personally go for double Arsenal attack on wildcard is because I see Arsenal scoring a lot of goals, right? A lot of goals in these next 3 games. I mean, we saw last season, right? I know Arsenal defensively are absolutely fantastic without a doubt, but Arsenal also going forward can certainly score a lot of goals, and we saw it last season. You know, they battered Sheffield like 6 or 7-0, they battered West Ham like 5 or 6-0, they destroyed Chelsea 5-0, they scored four goals away from home against Bournemouth last season, I believe. Like, Arsenal can score a lot of goals, and I think in the next 3 games they'll certainly do that. So I believe in chasing the high upside play and going for the attackers like Kai Havertz, like Saka, who can score and assist multiple times in any given game, right? So that's why I personally prefer the Arsenal double up as opposed to the Arsenal double up in defense. But if you were to go for 2 Arsenal defenders, it's still a good play, all right? You don't get me wrong, you don't have to listen to what I say. It's still a good play if you were to go for like Raya and Gabriel and one of Saka or Havertz. But look, if you go for double Arsenal defense, then you'd essentially be keeping them for the rest of the season, right? They are that good. So look, it's your team, you can do whatever you want, but if you were to ask me, that's what I would do. Now look, some people may argue not to go for Havertz because there's a chance he will play in midfield, but I actually don't think that's going to happen, right? So far, since Odegaard has been injured, Havertz has only played in that number 9 role. Against Spurs, away from home, Havertz was the striker. Against Man City, it looked like Havertz and Trossard were actually playing in that number 9 role together in like a 4-4-2 system before Trossard did get sent off. So look, I think Havertz will continue to play in that striker position because look, I think Arteta knows that you get the best out of Kai Havertz when he plays in that number 9 role. So that's why I do predict Havertz to continue playing striker, and that's why I believe he'll be a fantastic player to own from game week 6 to game week 8. And look, if you aren't wildcarding this week, out of any of these players, for me, the one player, if you've only got like 1 free transfer, I would be looking to get in Bukayo Saka if you don't have him already. So if you're not wildcarding this week, you got 1 free transfer, I would definitely be looking to bring in Bukayo Saka. He's returned in every game so far, and I think the big returns are coming. The big boy 15-point, 12-point hauls are going to come in these next 3 games, in my opinion. But with that being said, guys, look, take your pick. As long as you just own any, like, you can do any combination, right, of these Arsenal players, any combination, whether it's double Arsenal defense or even triple Arsenal defense, it's totally up to you. But yeah, Arsenal assets should be prioritized and should be targeted for game week 6. That is just my opinion. So next up, we do have Bryan Mbeumo, and just at the price of 7.2 million, I really do believe you should be considering him for your FPL team for game week 6, right? The long-term fixtures for Brentford are absolutely fantastic, right? If you get Mbeumo in now, he's a long-term set and forget option. You don't have to take him out, you don't have to transfer him out because the fixtures are that good. And as you guys can see, in game week 6, he's playing against a poor West Ham side, right? West Ham defensively are shocking, terrible. Then after that, it's Wolves at home, then Man United away, slightly tougher, and then Ipswich, Fulham, Bournemouth, Everton, Leicester, Villa, Newcastle. Like, guys, if you go for Mbeumo now, you'd essentially be holding him through all of these games up until realistically about game week 20, which is insane, right? The fixtures for Brentford up until game week 20 are really, really nice. And look, Mbeumo is a quality player, right? I think we all know this. He's a quality player. He's the 90-minute man. He plays every game. He's on penalties and super, super reliable. And in my opinion, he's just everything you'd want in an FPL asset, right? So for that reason, I just think he's absolutely fantastic. And again, really, really cheap at 7.2 million. So I do love Bryan Mbeumo as an option. And some people may argue that without Wissa, that makes Bryan Mbeumo a worse option. And look, that could slightly be true, but I don't think it's enough to go without Bryan Mbeumo, because like I said, he's a quality player within himself. He's Premier League proven. He guarantees goals. I really do think even without Wissa, Mbeumo still can score goals, and we saw that against Tottenham. We saw that in the last game against Spurs. You know, what a fantastic goal that was, right? And that's the sort of things I'm talking about. Bryan Mbeumo is a class player within himself. So yes, you know, he worked well with Wissa, but even without Wissa, he can still deliver. So for that reason, I would really recommend Bryan Mbeumo from Game Week 6, a long-term set and forget option in your FPL team. And these are the kind of players you want, realistically. You know, the reliable 90-minute men that can get you goals and assists. And also the underlying data is also pretty decent, right? 4 goals in 5 games, which is fantastic, and also 0.35 XG per 90 and 0.27 expected assists per 90. So look, overall I think there's just so many positives to going with Bryan Mbeumo. So for that reason, I would definitely just go for him in Game Week 6. And next up, we do have Phil Foden. And some of you guys may be looking at me thinking, why on earth am I recommending this player to you guys? But honestly, I think he could be a really good differential, right? We know how good Phil Foden is, firstly. And some of you guys may have doubts about him being in that starting 11 for Manchester City. But I do believe from Game Week 6 onwards, he will start games for Man City, right? Pep Guardiola has said already that Phil Foden is fit enough to start games and play 90 minutes, right? So with that being said, I do believe from Game Week 6, he will start games, right? This will be the start of Phil Foden's run, and that's my opinion. I'm trying to get sort of ahead of the curve, right? Because I feel like that's part of FPL, trying to get ahead of the curve and put players in that you think will do well before everyone else starts to bring them in. And I think Phil Foden is the perfect player to get ahead of the curve, because look, like I said, Phil Foden is quality, right? We know what he can do. He was the player of the season last season. He's a quality player, can get you goals, can get you assists. Last season, he had 33 starts and scored 19 goals and got 8 assists, right? He performed absolutely incredible and was one of the best FPL assets to own last season. So I think if Phil Foden does start, we know what he can do. He will deliver, right? Because he's that good. And like I said, Pep said that he's ready to start games. So I do believe from Game Week 6 onwards, he will start games. And look, the fixtures for Man City are really good as well. In Game Week 6, they play away to Newcastle. And that's actually an early kickoff, right? That is a 12:30 kickoff. So there is a possibility that we will get early team news and leaked lineups before the deadline. So if that is the case, and we do get the leaked lineups and you see Phil Foden is starting, then guys, I would definitely recommend to put him in, because like I said, KDB's injured, which also increases the chances of him starting. And look, you don't have to really worry about the likes of Doku and Semenyo, because Pep Guardiola also said that Phil Foden will be playing centrally this season. So the likes of Doku and Semenyo aren't going to affect the minutes that Foden gets. It's going to be more so like Gundogan and maybe Bernardo Silva as well. But look, I think Phil Foden will begin to start games from Game Week 6 onwards. And like I said, right, the fixtures are good. So Newcastle away in Game Week 6, Fulham at home in Game Week 7, Wolves away in Game Week 8, Southampton at home in Game Week 9. Guys, I can go on and on. The fixtures are really good, and you'd want Phil Foden for that fixture run. So with that being said, I think it's worth the risk. He's a massive differential, only 5.4% owned, and for a player of his quality is absolutely incredible. So he's a massive differential, a quality Premier League proven player. So guys, for that reason, I really do recommend you go for Phil Foden. So next up, we do have Anton Semenyo, and I think he could be a really good short-term punt for Game Week 6 and 7, because he is playing against Southampton at home and Leicester away in Game Week 6 and 7. 2 good teams to play against, 2 relegation fodder type teams. I think Semenyo could score big in these games. And look, if your team is set up in a way where you're able to sort of take this risk and take this short-term punt on Semenyo, then I would definitely do it, guys. I would definitely go for it, because it could pay off, right? So far this season, Bournemouth actually have been quite a good attacking team, and according to expected goals, as you guys can see here, right, according to expected goals, they've actually been the 5th best team. Man City, Liverpool, United and Tottenham are the only teams to be above Bournemouth for expected goals. So look, with that being said, I think when you combine that with the fact that they're playing against some of the worst defenses in the league, in Southampton and Leicester, I do think Semenyo could score big in these next 2 games. And look, he's definitely Bournemouth's best attacking outlet. On the eye test and also by data, you can see that Semenyo is causing problems, getting into good positions, getting lots of shots off. So I really do like Semenyo as an option. And to be fair, he's only blanked in 2 games, right? He scored 2 goals and got 1 assist so far this season. And the only 2 games he blanked in was against Liverpool and Chelsea. And even the Liverpool game, he scored, but it was disallowed just for offside. So look, Semenyo is a consistent threat for Bournemouth, And look, like I said, probably their best attacking outlet on that right hand side. So I really do like Semenyo as an option, and for me he's a really good short-term punt for game week 6 and 7. So look, he's a massive differential as well. As you guys can see, currently only 7.2% owned as well. So again, it's a really nice differential pick in my opinion. I do love a differential. I really do love a differential because it can help you gain those ranks. And again, I'm no expert. It's just my opinion. I'm just a guy that likes talking about FPL. So you can think I'm waffling. You don't have to listen to what I'm saying at all. But I think Semenyo in 6 and 7 could do really well. I personally wouldn't go for him as a long-term option. Like if your team is set up in a way where you can't really take that risk and you need to put in more sustainable long-term players like Mbeumo and those sort of players, then I wouldn't really go for Semenyo if your team isn't set up in a way where you're able to take risks, because the long-term fixtures for Bournemouth aren't really good. You know, in game week 8 it's against Arsenal at home, in game week 9 Villa away. So yeah, some pretty tough fixtures there. So yeah, but overall I think as a short-term punt for game week 6 and 7, Semenyo could be that guy, man. He could really be that guy. Next up, we do have Calvert-Lewin at just the price of 6 million. For me, he is a great long-term set and forget option. I'm just going to say that right now. The long-term fixtures for Everton are absolutely delightful, guys. Absolutely delightful. And as you guys can see here, right, for Calvert-Lewin, firstly, only 4.6% ownership. So again, a massive differential. And I think this guy could really do well in the next few upcoming game weeks. Crystal Palace at home in game week 6, who aren't good defensively. Newcastle at home, who aren't good defensively, who have been really poor so far this season. Then Ipswich away, who have been statistically the worst defensive team in the Premier League. So 3 really good games, and then Fulham at home, slightly tougher fixture but still a relatively decent one. And then Southampton, West Ham, Brentford. Guys, one interesting thing, right? I really want to show you guys this, because one interesting thing that when I was sort of doing my research yesterday and just looking at the stats for teams, right? Of course I love the eye test, but you know, I also do look at stats as well, but preferably secondary to the eye test, right? I always say that to you guys. I always prefer watching games. But one interesting thing that I found out, right, with the stats. So in terms of expected goals conceded, as you guys can see here, right, we have Calvert-Lewin's fixtures here: Palace, Newcastle, Ipswich, Fulham, Southampton, West Ham, Brentford, right? So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 teams, right? So keep those 7 teams in mind, and let's have a look at expected goals conceded, right? So in terms of expected goals conceded, these are the worst defensive teams in the Premier League, right? Ipswich, Brentford, West Ham, Southampton, Everton, but obviously Calvert-Lewin plays for Everton, so he can't play against himself. So after Everton, it's then Newcastle, then Crystal Palace, and then Leicester. Now, if you pay attention closely, these are all of Calvert-Lewin's next games. Calvert-Lewin is actually playing against the worst defensive teams in the Premier League. The next like 6 to 7 game weeks are against Palace, Newcastle, Ipswich, Southampton, West Ham, Brentford. Fulham are the only sort of decent defensive team that he actually plays against. Other than that, he's playing against Ipswich, Brentford, West Ham, Southampton, Newcastle, Crystal Palace. These are all the worst defensive teams currently in the Premier League. So for that reason, I really do love Calvert-Lewin as an option. I really do love him as an option. And yeah, like when I saw that yesterday, I was like, wow, that's really good. So essentially, you're sort of optimizing, you know, the chance of getting FPL points with by going for Calvert-Lewin, because Everton's fixtures are just simply that good. And yes, they are shocking from a defensive point of view, but they can certainly create chances going forward, and they've shown that this season. I mean, Calvert-Lewin does have 2 goals and 1 assist in 5 games, which is not a bad return at all. He's on penalties as well. He usually gets near enough to 90 minutes as well. So I do like Calvert-Lewin, and I love the fact that he's playing against the worst defensive teams in the Premier League. So yeah, with that in mind, man, I think again, at just the price of 6 million, a differential pick at 4.3% ownership, I think Calvert-Lewin could be a fantastic option for game week 6. But that's going to be it for today's video, guys. I really hope you did enjoy, and if you did enjoy, make sure you do smash a big thumbs up on the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and guys, I will catch you in the next video. But until then, I'm out. Peace.